Welcome to One on One, the Daily Item's weekly digital program featuring Susquehanna Valley newsmakers interviewed by Daily Item reporters. Today's guest is outgoing Daily Item publisher frank-leto, interviewed by editor Dennis-Lyons.
4 city blocks of new Ford trucks. Over 40,000 trucks sold. SMC is where you want to be. Sunbury Motors Ford has over 110 new Ford trucks. And during July, they'll include a complimentary accessory package. With the purchase of any new F-150 through July 31st, receive a tonneau cover, molded splash guards, and window deflectors at no additional charge. SMC is where you want to be because they have the largest selection of new Ford trucks in all of central Pennsylvania. And that means the biggest savings. Take up to $13,500 off on new F-150s. And SMC has them starting as low as $26,669. Save up to $7,000 on 2018 Ford Escapes. And they're slashed as low as $19,380. 2018 Explorers, Edges, and Expeditions will also be clearly marked with discounts up to $8,000. SMC is where you want to be in July for this mega summer spectacular sale and the complimentary F-150 accessory package. Sunbury Motors in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.
F-150 accessory package valued at $699. Excludes prior sales and ordered units.
Hello and welcome to One on One, the Daily Item's weekly digital newsmaker interview program. I'm Dennis-Lyons, the editor of the Daily Item and the Danville News. And today, for the first time since we started this program last September, we're going to focus on ourselves for a little while. Our guest is frank-leto, the publisher until this Friday, when he leaves to become publisher of the Joplin Globe in Missouri. Frank, thanks for taking a few minutes to sit down with us.
Thank you, Dennis. Glad to be here.
You and I arrived around the same time in November 2015. I've got you by 2 weeks, actually. We came to town with long careers in print journalism with strong beliefs in the important role a newspaper can play and should play in the community. But we also came at a time when a lot of people were sounding the death knell for newspapers. So, talk to me about, as you reflect on your experience here and as you look forward to where you're going in Missouri, talk to me a little bit about your vision for the role the newspaper here has played, and has that vision changed at all in your time?
Well, thank you, Dennis, for having me here. I appreciate the chance to talk to you and be on one-on-one. So this has been a really successful program for the Daily Item, and glad to be here today. One of the reasons I think you and I have gotten along so well is because we share a common belief in the value and importance of community newspapers. When you look at newspapers our size, and really the size of Joplin, they're the number one news source and news gathering operation in their community. They put the most resources against it, and generally speaking, there aren't a lot of local news options for the folks who are in these communities. So when you look at your group of journalists and photographers, you represent by far and away the largest news gathering operation in the valley. That's a special responsibility that we have. So you can find out information about the World Cup or what's going on in Iraq or some world event in lots of different places. But if you want to focus on our local counties, our local communities, local sports, we are that number one source and the best source to do that, the largest source to do that. And I think that gives us a special responsibility.
Do you see that as a long-term thing for community newspapers, and maybe community newspapers actually have a little bit brighter future than maybe some metro papers might?
Absolutely. I think because there are simply fewer news gathering operations, there's less competition for that. As long as people care about their communities, as long as folks are interested in what's happening in their school districts, local governments, local sports, we'll play a vital role in that information. One of the things that comes up periodically, people will ask me, what do you worry about? Are you afraid of competition or the internet? And I think I've said to you before, I worry about apathy. When citizens in a community don't know their neighbors, don't vote, don't pay attention to local school issues, don't pay attention to local government issues, and they just aren't connected or engaged in their communities, that's what puts us in danger.
I'll tell you what, when people ask me what the competition is, I often add the element of time. Because I do think that people sometimes just don't take the time to stay informed and to figure out what's going on. Now, one of the things, as most of the people watching this know, I spent 8 years at USA Today, and the difference between working at a national paper and working in a place like this is quite simply the impact your reporting has on the people that live right there.
Absolutely.
In fact, I could count the time on probably both hands that I was on the phone with a reader while I was at USA Today. I might talk to 10 people in the course of an average week here.
Absolutely.
So it's completely different.
It is, if I could add something to that, one of the things I always talk about in these community newspapers is one day you could be sitting down talking to somebody about a United Way campaign or some kind of a charitable organization that they're involved in, and they're looking to the newspaper to help them in some fashion. And we've tried to be a good community partner in the last few years that you and I have been here. But that the next day you may turn around and sit down with that same person and be talking to them about their advertising campaign. So in small communities, all of these things are connected. And it's really important, in my view, for myself as the publisher of the newspaper to be involved in the community, to be visible in the community, and to try and support the things that are important to our customers and to our readers.
Yeah, I remember we were at the talking to, I guess, the Sunbury Kiwanis when we were first both here, and you had done your spiel first, and then I got up and somebody asked me what the publisher does, and I said pretty much anything he damn well feels like. But,
that is the benefit of my job. Thank you, Dennis.
But you've done a lot of work, and tell me, I know you've been involved with the early childhood learning program, and I know you've been involved with the United Way and other ways. Tell me a little bit about that and why you have felt that so important.
I have learned a lot about early learning in the 2.5 years that I've been here. It's not something a passion that I brought with me. It's something that's developed as I've understood the situation a little more clearly. And so when I was asked to be on the board of the United Way, of course I accepted. They do so much good work in this community. And then in addition to serving on the allocations committee, I'm on the ELIC, the Early Learning Investment Commission. And when you look at the investment that a community can make in a child from the time they are born up until the time they go to kindergarten, for example, and then from kindergarten to third grade, that investment in preparing them to learn is absolutely critical, and making sure that they are they know their numbers, they know their letters, they can use the restroom themselves, that they can speak. I mean, you don't understand the importance. I don't mean you, but most people don't understand the importance of that investment when that child is very small, when their brain literally is a sponge. And so you can talk to people, even very well educated people, who don't think about the value of reading or singing or talking to a child and helping them grow their vocabulary, so when it comes time to go to kindergarten or first and second grade, they enter that school system so much further ahead and better prepared to learn. And the other reason that I think this ELIC is so important, selfishly, is that it aligns nicely with one of our 3 strategic objectives at the Daily Item, and that is, one of them is education with a focus on literacy. So making sure that young people are in a place where they can learn and be effective is absolutely critical, not only, we were just talking about, to society, where you're engaged. The literature is clear. The better educated you are, the more engaged you are.
Yeah, and I think most people watching, and maybe some others, wouldn't expect that would be a priority for a publisher of a newspaper, because the newspaper is what happened yesterday. But as we've grown working together, the newspaper isn't just about what's happening yesterday. And whether it's a year-long project like protecting our children that we did last year, we did a pretty important, I thought, report on the lack of foster parents around here recently. More and more, I think the value of a community newspaper is that word community, and making sure that we are as involved in what's going on and aware of what's going on as we possibly can be. And I imagine you expect to bring that same philosophy to Joplin.
Absolutely. I think when I came here from New Mexico, we had spent a lot of time in the community, built a lot of good relationships, tried to figure out where the priorities were in this community. One of the things that changed here that, at least speaking for myself, kind of caught me by surprise was the opioid crisis.
Yeah.
Didn't really see that coming. And to your point about it being a long-term play, and all the good work that your newsroom has done to bring attention to the issue, and the United Way and other community organizations that care about this, or trying to bring awareness to it, to try and help folks deal with the addiction, and also help folks understand that this is probably a generational problem, that this is not going to go away tomorrow, and that it's going to need a consistent and persistent effort to try and change it. So in answer to your question, absolutely, we'll try to get involved in what's important in the community, and that starts with listening to what people think is important.
Okay, well, we're going to come back and have more with Frank Leto in just a minute. You're watching One on One.
4 city blocks of new Ford trucks. Over 40,000 trucks sold. SMC is where you want to be. Sunbury Motors Ford has over 110 new Ford trucks. And during July, they'll include a complimentary accessory package. With the purchase of any new F-150 through July 31st, receive a tonneau cover, molded splash guards, and window deflectors at no additional charge. SMC is where you want to be because they have the largest selection of new Ford trucks in all of central Pennsylvania.
And that means the biggest savings.
Take up to $13,500 off on new F-150s. And SMC has them starting as low as $26,669. Save up to $7,000 on 2018 Ford Escapes. And they're slashed as low as $19,380. 2018 Explorers, Edges, and Expeditions will also be clearly marked with discounts up to $8,000. SMC is where you want to be in July for this mega summer spectacular sale and the complimentary F-150 accessory package. Sunbury Motors in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.
F-150 accessory package valued at $699. Excludes prior sales and older units.
We're back on One on One. Our guest today is Frank Leto, the publisher of the Daily Item until Friday when he leaves to take on that role in Joplin, Missouri. I'm Dennis-Lyons, the editor, and actually we debuted the show in September. It's actually the first time I've hosted this, so kind of liking being behind the microphone. It's not too bad.
You're doing very well.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you and I have been intimately involved with, including the fight for the right to know. Sometimes, I don't know if people understand how often a government entity may decide that they would just as soon the public not know what's going on. And there are vehicles for us to file, and there is a right to know office here in Pennsylvania. But I know at one point in our early time here, we worked together and spent quite a bit of money trying to get a Sunbury Police Department investigative internal report released, and we were successful in that. Talk to me as a publisher about your feeling about the newspaper's need to do that.
Well, I think there's two things I'd like to say about that, and one of them starts from when I was first started in this business in the early '80s, and I came up through, as you know, I came up through the advertising sales side, but I worked for an advertising director that used to tell me, Leto, we're a newspaper first and an advertising vehicle second, and that was at the core of my upbringing in this business. And so as I moved through different phases of my career and ultimately had responsibility for the organization, I never lost sight of the fact that at the end of the day, we're a news organization. And it's important for me to support our news team, and you're the head of the news team. And so when you say that we are going to fight this, that we need this information, we have a right to know this, it's public information, our readers have a right to know it, I feel in lockstep with you and agreed with you, and we were going to do everything that we could to make that happen. And you're right, we did spend money we didn't necessarily have, but this isn't about money. This is about doing what's right and what the public needs to know. And a good editor of mine used to say, we call this spinach journalism. It's good for you. Of course, that good editor is Dennis-Lyons.
Well, yeah. And the other thing is, and I think it's important to stress here that it's not about the Daily Item getting access to these public records. These are records that the taxpayers of a particular government, including in this case Sunbury, have every right to have. And
absolutely, but back to the point you raised in the very beginning, if it wasn't for the Daily Item, there's really no other institution in this valley that would have fought for that. So you're right, it wasn't about the Daily Item, but it's about us being a local news gathering organization with the First Amendment is a certain responsibility that we have.
So most Wednesday afternoons at 3 o'clock, myself, you, Bill Bowman, our managing editor, and Dave Hilliard, another one of our managing editors, gathers in your office, and we discuss editorial positions on things. And again, that's something maybe in the realm of transparency. I don't know if most people understand how we come about to the opinions that we publish each day on the opinion page. And I've always gotten the sense that was one of your favorite meetings of the week.
Absolutely, Dennis. Because for a couple of reasons. One, it gives us a chance to talk about local issues where we have a responsibility to take an opinion. Now, some newspapers choose not to endorse candidates, choose not to be as aggressive or as consistent in taking positions. I think it's part of our responsibility. Because again, as the largest news gathering operation, nobody else is going to sit down and I'm not talking about a public forum. I'm talking about in an interview setting and interview candidates for office.
Right.
And share our views or take a position which is not always popular.
Right.
And that comes up, and you and I have had this conversation many times. This is not a popularity contest. It's about the public's right to know, it's about transparency, and it's about expressing our informed opinion on what we think the best choices should be made.
And there is that big, probably 36-point type word opinion at the top of the page.
That's right.
And, some, I know it's a little hard because broadcast doesn't do this. And cable outlets do not do this. It is kind of unique. It is. I just used a modifier before the word unique. Shame on me. It is unique to newspapers that we express an opinion on issues of the day, and the vast majority of the issues are local or state issues, and we make sure every once in a while we will comment on a national or world issue, but the vast majority of our editorials are on local issues, and I think it's valuable. We're not trying to tell anybody what to think or who to vote for. We're just giving them our educated opinion. You mentioned before how people necessarily don't always take the time to be informed. Well, I think what a newspaper should do. I think you would agree with this is try to provide that education, try to provide the information that people need to make an intelligent decision.
I think that's right. And again, very few organizations in a small community like this will sit down and really talk to as many candidates as we do. And I certainly hope that's something the Daily Item continues to do.
Well, yeah, and in fact, as watchers might not know, we also have a community advisory board that meets monthly. And we have members, about 7 or 8 members of the community who meet with us on once a week on a Wednesday afternoon, and we talk about issues in the community, and sometimes their thoughts help to generate what our opinions will be. Sometimes they give us story ideas, and it's a really great way to reach out beyond these walls to get the community to tell us what they think is going on, and I think that's been a real valuable thing.
I agree completely.
But as we speak about the opinion page, one of the things that people may notice in the newspaper these days is that we've moved it. It's in the B section of the newspaper, and there's a reason for that. We've been experiencing issues involving the tariffs on Canadian mills and the importing of newsprint, and I know that this has been tough for both of us. And although we I think handled it as well as we could, neither one of us wanted to be in a situation where we were actually taking pages out of the newspaper. But
no, of course not.
Where do you see that going? I think from our discussion, you don't think this is going to end anytime soon.
I don't, and I don't have any special knowledge, but we are planning as an organization, as a business, that this will continue through 2018. Now, we've done a good job, I think, as a management team, which includes our production and sales and other folks, in addition to Dennis and myself, in trying to plan for what we know are going to be reductions. For example, one of our suppliers basically told us in the last couple of weeks, don't send us any orders for August because we're not going to fulfill them. So that means one of our suppliers, who actually supplies 2/3 of our newsprint, is taking no orders for an entire month. Now, we have a supply. We've tried to manage our supply of newsprint so we can get through this, but we have to assume that we're going to operate in a fixed universe of inventory, and that means that we can only have so many pages going forward. It is a tough thing. I think the news department here at the Daily Item and the Danville News has managed it as well as it could have been. I think the fact that you especially were as transparent as you were in your columns and other stories about why this was happening, and again, that we made a commitment to say anything we take out of print is also going to be in our e-edition and online, so that information is still available. It may not be in the same form that they had it before, but it's still available. I feel that made me feel good as a publisher that we're not taking something away from folks.
Yeah. So now I know I didn't let you bring your crystal ball into the interview here, but
or my magic wand.
Moving forward, whether it's here or Joplin, what do you see as far as digital versus print, and do you still see print being a huge factor?
As you know, our audience has certain characteristics. They are better educated than the market as a whole, they're more affluent than the market as a whole, and they're older than the market as a whole. And I think they make for good consumers, which makes it still a very viable and valuable advertising vehicle. I hear over and over again, and I know you do too, I like getting a print newspaper. So I think, through our lifetime, there'll certainly be print newspapers, but the digital transformation is happening. And we decided a long time ago that if the market is telling us they want to receive more information on their computer, on their phones, on their tablets, that's what the market is telling us, and we have to satisfy that. So we have a bigger digital audience today than we do in print. I don't see that changing anytime soon, but I also don't see print newspapers going away.
Okay, we've got about a minute to go here, Frank. As you head out the door away from the Susquehanna Valley, something that you'll take with you, a memory, or something that you think you feel proudest of having accomplished here?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm really...
None of the others were good.
Yes, that's an especially good question. I'm really proud of the team that I've had a chance to work with. Yourself, Patty, Norman, Len, the others. A really experienced group of folks who care about our business. They care about the community that they live in. They care about the customers that they serve. They care about our readers. And I think at the end of the day, part of my job is to say, is the institution a little bit better after you were here? And then I'm sure Fred will say, I want to make the institution better at the end of his tenure. So I can say, I think with confidence, that we're in a better place today than we were 2.5 years ago. We're very proud of our work, very proud of the team that we have here, and very, very thankful for my time in the Susquehanna Valley.
Well, I have enjoyed working with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for being with us on One-on-One. When our new publisher, Fred Scheller, gets settled in, we'll do another interview program with him in that hot seat. Wasn't all that hot, though, actually.
Yeah, very conversational.
And we enjoy the fact that we get to do this, and we hope you'll come back next week for another edition of One-on-One. Thank you, Frank-Leto.
Thank you, Dennis-Lyons.
Thank you for watching One-on-One. We hope you will join us this coming Thursday at noon for a new installment.